Hi, I'm Rob Reininger. I'm the lead technical designer in Austin.
I'm Spencer Johnson. I'm an associate gameplay engineer on the LA team.
I'm Zane Bien. I am the UI creative director here at Foundry 42.
I'm Trevor Warnish, the principal UI artist here.
I'm Pete Mackey, senior designer on Star Citizen.
The kiosk is our first foray into an economy in the game, a real living economy driven by the players.
The kiosk is going to be the user's interface to purchase things or sell them within the game that are not physically within the shop in the case of purchasing, or things in their inventory, things from their ship. All selling will be done through the kiosk.
What that will allow you to do is view an entire store's inventory. You can browse through the list, you can filter it, you can sort it, and view its stats in comparison to other things. It will extend to eventually the landing services. You can use the kiosk to restock your ship and refuel and so forth.
You'll be able to equip a ship item directly on the ship at the time of purchase if you want, or have it delivered to the cargo hold of your ship.
It's almost like ordering through Amazon or something where you can select a shipping destination. So whether you have a ship landed on a cargo pad, or there's a cargo area in the landing zone you're at, or you want to ship it somewhere, like you can select that as an option.
So I've been working on economy-related stuff almost since January of 2013. And so I'm really excited that, we're getting to the point now that, the stuff that we were talking about, in the early days of the project, we have tool support internally for that I can actually start building this stuff. In addition, I work out things like the recipes for the supply chains and manufacturing. Recipe in the context of Star Citizen is somewhat similar to a crafting recipe in other MMOs. It defines the types of commodities and resources that go into manufacturing a given item, like a laser cannon or even a ship. The way that we use recipes and the way that you might find them in another game is that those recipes generally aren't used directly by the players. Instead, they're used by the design team to really sculpt the types of goods that are bought and sold at any location in the world, and that's to make that location feel correct. So if it's a factory, that it buys and sells the kinds of things that you would expect from that location.
I've been working on the back-end code side of the shopping and kiosk systems. The simplest way to describe making the shopping component we have is talking with the various systems that are all involved in the player making purchases and transactions through the whole process of using a kiosk or using a storefront to buy things and then have that enter into your persistence.
So commodities make up a big part of the economy because everything within the game is created from one of the resources that runs through the system. Iron, gold, titanium, hydrogen, oxygen. To get commodities into the game means that we can start building the foundation for creating an actual economy where if deliveries aren't being made to a location, then all of a sudden their manufacturing capability is no longer at its peak performance. So their demand goes up, prices go up. You can start to get that fluctuation in pricing. So in terms of the beginning point, this is really a big step for getting that in place.
Some of the big challenges for developing this economy is unifying the scale because, as we have items, from super tiny and inconsequentially priced all the way up to these massive battle cruisers, right? And they all have to fit somewhere on the same scale. And so that's been probably one of the biggest challenges. And the others are just the scope of the amount of work that has to get done in terms of building the recipes and, even to the point of building the individual shop inventories, because that's all done by hand. We have a location and we want it to buy and sell certain things. So we actually, as designers, have to go in and, determine what is bought and sold there.
When you go and buy these commodities, you're going to buy a bunch of iron, say. Where's that iron going to go? Your ship, right? That makes the most sense. Got to go in your ship. But what if you have multiple ships? So obviously there needs to be a way to say, oh, I want to put this in my Hornet, or I want to put this in my Idris. I want to put this stuff I'm buying right now in this ship. And then you've got cargo grids. You've got this whole other system that's being developed of how much stuff can we put in the ship, and how is the player going to decide what ship to put it in. So a lot of these options lead to needing very dynamic solutions on the code side. We need to accommodate putting these commodities anywhere. We need to give the player the option to select where they're going. We need to save where this stuff is kept, because certainly you might think, oh, it's just in the ship, but it becomes very complicated on the persistence end of things when saving what the player has done. Well, where did they keep it? All of this iron, you need to keep track of, oh, well, it was left in this cargo bay of this ship, which was on this port of, this space station, A lot of these different systems are, first of all, not always running directly on your computer at home, sometimes running in our SIG backend systems. And there's also a lot of asynchronous events and calls. So you have to wait for things to happen, basically. You have to send messages and wait for answers rather than just getting immediate feedback. Because, again, like I said, the shopping component really exists at the center of a lot of different things communicating.
I also set the prices for the commodities, and it's a similar process. It doesn't have quite as much it's not quite as intricate as the pricing for the items, because there aren't gameplay values associated with this that I need to take into account. So we actually have a tool that we internally call Trade Slayer and another one called Price Fixer that help with this job. And Trade Slayer is primarily for setting the prices for the commodities. What it does is it helps me figure out what the base value for a commodity should be based off of a bunch of different analytics data points. And then it also helps me figure out what the ranges that those should fluctuate in. And then Price Fixer does a very similar task, but it's quite a bit more complicated. And that helps me set the prices for the items, but then it actually takes that one step further. And then I use those items to help me value a ship. So it goes all the way from pricing a countermeasure launcher to the price of a constellation with the included P-52.
Some of the challenges that we faced when designing this was, CR really wants that tangible feel. He wants to be able to see the items. He wants to be able to see how it's going to look on, a ship or, in the place that it belongs. So doing that in a way where people don't have to navigate 5,000 different layers of a hierarchy in a window. Having that be understandable and intuitive to the player was the big challenge here.
Complexity for the economy is pretty deep because it is tightly integrated with the gameplay. A large portion of my time is spent interfacing with the tech design team just to make sure that I understand how the item progression curves work and what the expected types of play are for those items so that I can make sure that they have the right price.
One of the most exciting things about building the kiosk was the visual style side of it. There's going to be a low end, kind of like an old school DOS prompt BBS forum style. And then we also have a mid end, like a mid 2000s Web 2.0 style. If you go to Grimhex is where you'll see the low end kiosks. Port Olisar, for example, will have kind of the mid nice range kiosk.
One thing we had to take into account was branding of this interface. So when you go into a shop, say Kasaba outlet, you'll see its logo and the color scheme applied. It's all one underlying system, but we swap out the graphics depending on the store and the manufacturer.
It was really fun to design the old school style one, the low end one, just kind of develop these frame by frame animations that you would see old, DOS games and things like that.
When I talk about the shopping code and it existing sort of as this glorified middleman, this intermediary step between a lot of moving parts, one of those parts is subsumption, like back-end shopping service. There's a whole bunch of back-end services we have as a part of subsumption in the diffusion system. One of those is the shopping service. What the code that I'm writing does, it communicates to this back-end service which exists on our SIG servers and gets inventory information. Olisar, Dumpers Depot, or Kasaba has this inventory with these prices, this quantity of that item. And every store has a unique set of information. And so we need to communicate to that back-end service and periodically update, restock, things like that. And there's just a large communication chain of different moving parts that need to be talked to at different times. There's definitely a lot of communication that happens between these different teams, like the UI kiosk team and myself, the shopping back-end team, because we're in different countries. It's a lot of back and forth. It's, okay, so we need to interface like this. We need to have this line of communication. Oftentimes we'll create function interfaces so we could say, this is exactly the code you need to call. Even if I haven't written it yet, this is what it'll look like.
The kiosk actually requires a lot of different changes to go in for 3.0. We needed, persistence for ships, persistent DB as far as their inventory. So as people purchase goods, they have to fly a ship to a location, purchase the stuff that they want on that ship, fly that ship to another location in order to sell it. So it doesn't allow people to go to any location they want and spawn any ship. It forces them to fly their ships around the universe. So previously you were able to just do, oh, I'm a Grim Hex and I want my Freelancer now, or I want my Hornet now. So now that people have to fly these things around, it's gonna force them to think about like, ooh, maybe I need an escort back to this other place because I wanna leave this ship here, but I wanna, get a different ship and bring it over here so I can buy or sell some things for this ship.
Prices will change based on inventory levels and stock levels, and those inventory and stock levels are set on a per location basis. So you can have 2 different casabas in 2 different parts of the world that have different pricing schemes. And it may be that they have the same base price for a given item, but due to the fact that one of them might be farther away from a distribution point, that it gets restocked less often, and therefore the price stays higher on that item more regularly than at the other shop. And that's just one example of kind of the complexity that we should be able to deliver in 3.0.
Your player persistence is everything that you own as a player. So it could be the commodities you have, how many SCU of iron do you have, or what shirt are you wearing? So that would be your player's persistence data. Luckily, that system already exists, so it's constantly making improvements to it. And so this new shopping code we have has to interface with some of the older parts of persistence and some of the newer parts as well, so that we really make sure we're saving what you do.
The big thing that is going to change for 3.0 is that it's really going to start to feel a lot more like the overall experience that we've been talking about for so long. Persistence is a big part of that. The ability to interface with things in the game through the kiosk is going to be another big portion of that. Cargo system is coming online, actually being able to carry things and have your ship keep track of the stuff that's on it and require people to transfer goods from A to B. That was a big part of our hauling and trading professions.
That's the exciting part. What we're doing right now is it's laying the foundation for these cool features we're going to see coming up, like systemic pricing, like dynamic economies that really react to players buying things in certain locations and selling them in others.
As these things start to come online, it's really going to change the experience that people are having now and turn it much more into the game that we envision.
So the cool thing about the kiosk is it's in-world like all of our other interfaces. So, that will have tie-ins with the interaction system where you can, bring up a cursor and interact with the screen. So that will be sort of our first foray into getting interactable screens in world working with this unified interaction system. So later on, we'll expand that to elevator panels and other in-world screens. The kiosk is a nice test because it has quite in-depth functionality like sorting and filtering and pop-ups and things like that. So it's quite a complex interface over, let's say, something simple like an elevator floor selection panel. So it's a good test for us.
This is the big step we've been waiting for a long time, to be able to start adding a lot of these other professions and features into the game. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be the beginning of a lot of great things for the players. It's going to be awesome.